How can you not be fired up about that win that we saw last night from Duke? A big-time performance in the second half against the Louisville Cardinals. Duke now 3-0 in conference play. Big things coming for this team.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man. The Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. So great to have you here with us today on this Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. And on today's show, we got to highlight the big-time performance last night for Duke against Louisville, a major second-half comeback, stars of the game galore all over the court for this Duke team, and a gritty win as they defeat Louisville by 11. We'll bring our guy Jeff Fedotin from Forbes on with us to talk all things Duke basketball here on today's show. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Take a moment, if you will, to watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends. Continue to spread the word about everything that we're doing here with Locked On Blue Devils. Really grateful for this community that we've got of awesome Duke fans all over the place. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. We're on Instagram and TikTok as well. As mentioned, the aforementioned Jeff Fedotin back with us once again on the program. And man, Jeff, there are just so many amazing spots to start with this game in particular. Thanks for being here today, man. And look, at halftime of the game against Louisville, it looked like we'd be talking about yet another really not impressive defensive performance, disappointing from Duke. And then all of a sudden, the second half happened, and we're in a much better mood, aren't we, man?
Oh, man, to say it's a tale of two halves, such a cliche, but boy, does it ring true here. You know, for me, it was especially a tale of two halves. I actually, I sometimes have to do this where I was watching the first half, and then I always record the Duke games, and then I had to, help get the kids to bed and stuff, and then I had to watch the second half later. So I had a whole bunch of time to stew on this, like, oh my God, their season's going down the tubes. So I really felt this tale of two halves, even more so. And that's why when I was texting you, I'm like, well, I gotta text JJ, but I've got to wait. By the time I saw the second half, it was so late at night. But that first half had everything that we, every concern that Duke fans have, the slow starts, allowing too many three-pointers as they've done of late, not showing enough fire and fight. All that was present, and then all that went away in just a spectacular second half performance when they, allowed second half just 32.3%, and they allowed just 26 points in the second half. Just a great performance, especially defensively in the second half.
Yeah, and they needed it because that first half was bad from the Duke side of things, trailing by 9 at the break, and then a big turnaround there in the second half, like we talked about, to come back and win by 11. That's now 3 straight games that Pat Kelsey has been the head coach of Louisville, and he's walked into the locker room with a lead at halftime, and in all 3 matchups, Duke's won by 11. So he just can't figure out a way to get past this Duke squad. Yet another impressive performance from our team, although this team is entirely different than the ones that he played against last season a couple of different times. Like you said, though, Jeff, speaking to second half turnarounds, I was online interacting with fellow Duke fans all over the place, and so many people were posting about switching the room that they were in to watch the second half of the game, maybe changing a different TV, maybe changing shirts and all the things. So I know, let us know in the comments down below, what were your superstitious things that you might have done to kind of change the mojo and that sort of thing? Because, look, something clearly happened, Jeff. There was a message sent at halftime by Jon Scheyer, and the team absolutely responded.
I would love to know what he said. Of course, Coach K was a little bit more of a fire and brimstone guy, expletive-filled rants and stuff. So I'm really curious what was said at halftime. And, it's funny, you made a great point of how that's been Pat Kelsey, who's a really good coach, that this Louisville team is a burgeoning power. They look like the old Louisville power in the ACC, or at least they haven't been in the ACC that long, but kind of like harken back to the great Louisville teams. This is the team that's going to be on the rise. They continue to recruit well, bring in good transfers, but they've had this trend against Duke where they, always give up the lead. But this goes back, we're texting a little bit about this. This one of the most memorable regular season games in Duke history that is like not a Duke Carolina game was that 2019 Zion Cam team against Louisville when there was that ridiculous lead that Louisville had. Duke just Murphy's Law in the first half for them, and then they had an amazing comeback. This wasn't quite as epic, but it did have shades of that. So there's something to this that predates Pat Kelsey regarding Duke and Louisville.
Yeah, it's now 7 straight wins that Duke has had against the Cardinals. So hopefully we can make it 8 when we play them again on January 26th. That 2019 game had a little bit of everything. I'm right now visualizing the R.J. Barrett between the legs bounce pass backwards to Cam Reddish, who hit a big-time 3. Duke trailed by as many as 23 points in that game, getting to the 7-8 minute mark before they really ramped it up and turned it on. Jordan Goldwire gave good minutes for Duke that night. I'm glad that there wasn't as large of a deficit for Duke to climb back this time around. Their largest deficit was 12 in this game, which is the largest deficit the team has faced this entire season. What composure, though, and poise that they showed to keep fighting back like this.
Totally, yeah. It wasn't quite it wasn't quite like you pointed out the deficit and quite the drama, but nonetheless, like you said, the biggest deficit and the fact what we've seen during this kind of lull during the Christmas break, the fact that all these issues that we had seen were creeping up and kind of magnified in at its worst points, the way they were shooting 3-pointers and stuff. So yes, the deficit wasn't as big, but because of how they were beating Duke with Duke's poor defense, again, the 3-point shooting not working, just all those issues, you're like, what happened to the team that we saw in early this season that looked like it was one of the best teams in college basketball?
Jeff, a couple of different ways to look at this. When you talk about this Duke win for the Blue Devils over Louisville, and not as big of a comeback as we saw in 2019, but in some ways I'm okay with that, because of the long stretch that Duke had in the second half. It kind of reminded me, okay, this is how good Duke basketball is this season, rather than, wow, what amazing. We never thought we'd see a comeback like this before. Like that interesting perspective that in the way they played throughout the, second half of that second half, it was like, man, this is a dominant performance for Duke. Keep in mind, Louisville was without their star freshman, Michael Brown Jr., and that would have been an absolute gut punch, Jeff, if you lose to the Cardinals without their top guy.
That is a great point because he is a special guy. He's going to be a lottery pick for sure. So it is important to remember that. But yeah, what grit they showed. JJ, something that's interesting is I kept wondering, like, what the Duke defense was so good early in the year. What happened during, I'm sure part of it was rust, part of it was a layoff. My theory might have been that because Caden Boozer, who I really like, he really the ball doesn't stick with him. The ball really moves. He
plays with a lot of pace. Yeah,
great pace. Has obviously such a great connection, not surprisingly, with his twin brother. That he had been getting more run, even starting, and Dame Sarr's role had been pushed back. I think a big story of the game. We're obviously going to talk about Cam Boozer. We're going to talk about Caleb Foster with maybe his best game in his Duke career. But Dame Sarr hadn't been playing as much, and his defensive energy, verve, what he did to Conwell, who was destroying him in the first half, I think was a story of the game. And I think maybe why the Duke defense returned in the second half. He is such an elite defender. And so maybe it's a trade-off. I wonder if Dame Sarr is going to be back in the starting lineup, or maybe there's games or situations where you lean on Kane a little bit to help the offense, and then there's times where you lean on Sarr a little bit to help the defense.
I'm glad you said that because the counting stats certainly aren't going to be eye-popping when you look at Sarr's numbers at the end of the game, but his impact certainly was felt. I think you also saw that in the second half when Maliq Brown came in and spelled Pat Gongba for a good bit, and that was a clear message being sent about the level of defense that Duke wants to see, and Maliq Brown was giving them the effort right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting to see. One thing that's always fun to see is just how the rotation, and now you've seen that when Dame Sarr looked like, man, he doesn't get it. Well, he's certainly back, a key member now. So you wonder what happens to guy, and Caden is still going to be a key part of this team. You wonder about Nick Kamenia. He really had an off game. He had just one shot that just didn't even, a 3-point attempt that didn't come clear.
Yeah.
Is he a little bit more on the back burner? Are they going to go? Is this more of like a 7-man rotation with Maliq Brown was also great on defense, and Sarr coming off the bench? I do kind of like Sarr coming off the bench. He brings an energy, I think, and I think he might be better as more of a 6-man than a starter, but maybe he goes back in the starting lineup. But yeah, are they more of like a 7-man within Darren Harris getting a little bit of run, Kamenia getting a little bit of run, but kind of a little bit more of the periphery?
Yeah, and that happened in the first half. I mean, in the second half, it was clear those guys weren't going to play. Duke found ways to win this game, and so they made those adjustments there when they needed to. All right, we've got more to talk about. We've got some stars of the game, certainly, to highlight from the Duke side of things, and we'll do that when Locked On Blue Devils continues. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Rugia. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, life. It just doesn't switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible times, Rugia Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rugia Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rugia Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves under your tongue so it absorbs fast. It's easy to understand why 150,000 men have already made the switch. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. That's rugiet.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugia Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. A proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. I want to say thank you again for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and your first watch here today, as you do every single day. Take your love for the show to the absolute next level. Thank you so much for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. This is access to an ad-free audio version of Locked On Blue Devils, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. We've got an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this very show. Check it out in the description below. Thanks so much for being a part of our Locked On Blue Devils family. All right, Jeff Fedotin's hanging out with me today talking about this Duke win over Louisville. 11-point victory. Once again, Pat Kelsey can't hold on to the halftime lead against Duke. It goes beyond his tenure, though, because clearly Duke had success against the Kenny Payne era of Louisville basketball and some of those other matchups that we've seen. But you highlighted him a second ago, Jeff, and we got to give him his flowers and some love. How about a career night, career high 20 points from Mr. Caleb Foster to go along with 4 rebounds and a couple of assists in that second half specifically? He was downhill Foster, like he wanted to get to the rim. No one was stopping his dribble penetration, and he was able to make shots around the rim. That was so key.
Yeah, how about not only the 20 points, JJ 9 of 13 shooting percentage there for a guard. And yeah, he was just willing his way, using his physicality. That's what we want to see. He's a big guard. He's 6'5", he's strong, he's burly. This was, I think you'd agree, he's played a Duke uniform. I think the 2 other contenders are against Michigan State this year, and I was actually covering the game in the Champions Classic when they played his freshman year.
Yeah,
really was the best Duke player on the court. I actually talked to Tom Izzo afterwards. He's like, I felt pretty good that I was worried about Jeremy Roach, who burned them in the NCAA tournament, and all the other stars, and it's like the one guy we accounted for, but maybe not quite to the same degree as those other stars kind of burned us. But yeah, just what a performance by Caleb Foster. Best of in a Duke uniform?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I think that was the best that we've seen from him. I loved all the effort and intensity. Like I said, there have been moments throughout Foster's career where he's able to get to the rim, but sometimes the finish hasn't necessarily been there. Moving Caden Boozer into the starting lineup, I think, has let Caleb shift over to kind of a natural off-ball attacking mode. Although in the second half, Caden Boozer was off to the sidelines and sitting on the bench. And so it was Caleb Foster kind of initiating the offense to Cam Boozer. And so many times, if you go back and you watch Coach Scheyer on the sidelines, he's emphasizing and really wanting Foster to attack the rim and finish through contact and that sort of thing. That was the most surprising thing, is the finish, because yes, the size is there, but truthfully, there have been stretches in Foster's career where for whatever reason, he just doesn't finish that well in the lane around the big trees and whatnot. He's not this crazy dunker, right, that's getting way above the rim and playing so high. So the finishing was there. That was so paramount. And if he continues to do that, I said this earlier today on Locked On College Basketball, there's not a team in the country that can, that Duke can't compete with. Duke would once again assure themselves as one of the Final Four contenders, clearly capable of winning it all. We get that version of Caleb Foster every game.
That's a great point, JJ, about his finishing. Like, he's been able to get to his spots near the goal like that, but just for whatever reason, he couldn't finish. And that was certainly an issue early in the game in the first half. Not so much for Foster, but Duke had so many just point blank attempts where they should be able to score. Pat Gongba certainly had that issue where they couldn't put it in. Well, the second half, Foster was driving to the hole each time. And like you said, 13, that also says it all. So what a just great performance by him.
Yeah, follow number one, follow one's lead. And that's exactly what Duke did with Caleb Foster there. All right, Jeff, let's go to another star. How about Showtime Slim? Isaiah Evans, big time performance once again, really helped carry Duke in the first half. Look, the deficit was one thing in the first half. If it had been way worse, it would have been much more difficult for Duke to come all the way back in the second half. He still made tough shots, big and one finishes there in the second half of play. And for Isaiah Evans specifically, Jeff, a 23-point performance, 6 rebounds. And how about on the defensive end, 4 steals for Isaiah Evans?
Right. I mean, we know his shot making, but I'm glad you pointed out the 6 rebounds and 4 steals, because the way his game, the two things that I'm loving about Evans right now is the way he's just diversified his game. With the rebounds and the steals, he had a game this season, I'm forgetting which one, but he had the 5 blocks. Like, he is not just a flamethrower from outside anymore. He's bringing so much more to his game, which is exactly why he came back, to become a more versatile star. So he's not just a guy who's a stat about, shooting 82% of his shots from 3-point range. He's much more than that. So I love the way that he's becoming more versatile. The other thing I really like about him, JJ, in addition to his great 3-point shooting and his energy, is one of the Achilles heels of this Duke team, which is still even present against in this great win, is the free throw shooting. Yeah. Caleb Foster was amazing, but he was 2 of 6 from free throw shooting. Well, Isaiah Evans was 5 of 5 from the line, and he's shooting, I think it's high 80s, maybe 89% from the free throw line. So I feel this is when we have games that are going to come, because the ACC is so much stronger this year, the schedule remains strong. Those end of the game moments, if Duke is just up by a couple points, just get the ball to Evans, make the opponent foul him, and he's money from there, just like they used to do with Con Knipple or JJ Redick, maybe even Jon Scheyer. Even though they're struggling from the free throw line, they do have one guy they can absolutely count on for the free throws.
Yeah, and Evans has certainly been that guy. I'm glad you said that, because we were right to point it back out in the Florida State win that Duke went 23 of 25 from the free throw line, and that was amazing. However, it kind of regressed once again when you look at what Duke did from the charity stripe against Louisville. Evans, not the case. I was thinking that exact same thing. We're on the same wavelength here, Jeff. When I'm watching Foster in the second half get to his career high, it had been 18. Now he scores 20. I'm sitting there thinking, brother, it could be even greater than this if you would just take care of these free throws. And that's been one of the more frustrating things about Foster. So although good performance from him, good performance from Isaiah Evans, and of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the National Player of the Year. We're already speaking this one into existence. It has to happen. Cameron Boozer, 27 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. One of the most quiet 27-point performances that you'll see. I mean, it's unreal that this guy, I mean, in some ways you hate to do it, but you might take it for granted what we're getting to see every single game from Cam Boozer.
It's just ridiculous and unreal, and we absolutely are taking it for granted. He's the third star we mentioned, because it's just
exactly.
He's regular 27. What this guy is doing is astonishing. I mean, it's like we have it's like you can never, and then you follow it up with this guy who's what he's doing on the college level at the same point might even be beyond that. I mean, he's leading all of NCAA in points, which is just staggering for a freshman. And when you're
pretty awesome,
the hundreds of teams there are, and you have a freshman doing this, it's mind blowing. The things that seem to be consistent, he's bringing it every game, and to such a point that we're forgetting about it. And the other consistent thing is I mentioned this, we talked about last time we were on, is his dad's threads continued to be consistently stellar. You saw that last night he had the 12 sweatshirt, but then for Cam's number, but on the back he then had number 2 for Caden, which is what the style, the consistency of Cam Boozer on the court, the consistent style of his dad Carlos off the court, just a perfect match there.
Yeah, that's a dad that can't pick favorites. So that's a smart move by Carlos to wear that for sure. All right, well, we've got one more break due up here on the program. I want to dive a little bit further into the box score here between Duke and Louisville. Get a really impressive win for our guys as the Blue Devils advance to 3-0 on the season in ACC play. Lockdown Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Guys, the NFL wildcard round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to bets you like the most. Open the Profit Boost Pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. I'm so excited for NFL Wildcard Weekend. How about the fact that our in-state Carolina Panthers are back in the mix, playing on Saturday? Unfortunately, the Rams favored by 10.5, so we'll see how that one plays out. But a lot of other great games that you can watch, and all of it you can be a part of by visiting FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Grab your Profit Boost Pack every NFL playoff game day. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, let's keep going. Talking about the Duke win against Louisville. I'm JJ Jackson, joined today by Jeff Fedotin from Forbes, who's been a longtime friend of the program. So, Jeff, we got to look at this box score. And I definitely want to highlight what Duke was able to do in that second half defensively. The major comeback they were able to make, just 26 points scored by the Cardinals in that second half. That's more fitting. And let's keep in mind, that's a Ali Khalifa three-pointer in late garbage time that made him 5 for 5, which was just absurd that this guy went 4 for 4 in the first half. But they locked down defensively in that second half.
Absolutely. I mean, this has been that trend we're talking about with giving up so many points. We did in the first half to Florida State. You even go back to Lipscomb. That's kind of when this started. They gave up a lot of first half points. So you're just like 47 first half points. That's just not a recipe for victory. It was also totally played at Louisville's pace. They like to get out and run. They like to just fire up a lot of threes. That's what they do. The Duke made it more of a physical grind out game. They have more physicality, they have more size, and a slower game, and limiting Louisville to 26 points and 32.3% in the second half. Look at the 3-point percentage of the differences in the second half for Louisville. 10 of 21, 47.6% in the first half. And then Duke really clamped down. And also maybe some of the luck went away. They were just, like you said, Khalifa's threes were just, an out-of-body experience.
Silly, yeah.
But Louisville was down to 2 of 17 or 11.8% from 3-point range in the second half. Just a huge swing right there.
Yeah, as soon as you see the big fella bank one in from the top of the key, things might be going his way. And it's a career day for Ali Khalifa. Unfortunately for him, as Jay Billis called him, the Egyptian magician, while we were watching the game unfold. Unfortunately for him, it all came in a losing effort. Really impressed, all told, by Duke. And then the last thing to highlight here, Jon Scheyer made it a point after the Florida State game, Jeff. As you're well aware, FSU ended up making 14 three-pointers, actually 2 more than Duke did. And Florida State beat Duke in the points in the paint department 30-28. And that was just unacceptable. And in some ways, you look at that box score and it makes no sense that Duke was able to hold on and beat FSU. How about correcting that? Duke, as Scheyer pointed out here, 40-26, the points in the paint advantage that Duke had.
Just amazing. And that's playing to their strengths too, right? Like Louisville is an athletic team. They do have they have better shooter guys like Conwell and McNeely. They did a really good job at McNeely. That and Louisville, once they bring Brown back, their strength is more on the perimeter than Duke.
Yep.
But Duke certainly has their strength is in that post with here, Big Pat and Maliq Brown, and also the bigger guard. So yeah, the fact that they were able to take advantage of that in the second half, go more toward their strengths, big difference in the game right there.
Well, this has obviously been exciting to talk about Duke. 3-0 now in league play. They've got another top 25 test coming up on Saturday against an SMU squad that knocked off North Carolina last year. SMU plays at Clemson late tonight, so we'll wait and see how that result shores up for the Mustangs. But excited to see Duke back in action, another home game, and hopefully there's carryover from the second half and not another kind of first half performance that we saw for Duke here.
Absolutely. And 3-0 in the ACC. I mean, that's really to get out to the start. You looked at before the season, and I know Michael Brown wasn't there for Louisville. I think that's their best player. But you looked and you're like, oh, geez, at Louisville, that might be an L. Like, that's going to be as tough a game. So that they can sneak out a W there, be 3-0 when Louisville already has 2 losses. You figure their biggest competition to win the ACC, probably North Carolina, who has already, like you said, lost to that SMU team we're going to face. Louisville has 2 losses already. It gives Duke a little bit of a cushion. There's a lot of games to be played, a lot of tough games to be played, but still you got to like where Duke is at right now.
Jeff, thanks for being here today, man. How can people follow you? How can they get involved and see more of your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks so much, JJ. Always a blast to talk Duke basketball with you. So for Forbes, I cover mostly the NFL and mostly the Chiefs, but with them having a rare down season, I'll be dipping into some other topics, maybe some college basketball. I always love writing about Duke. So yeah, definitely check out my work there. My last name is Fedotin. You can find all my work there. I have my own Believe in Chiefs podcast. I know Kevin Conley does such a great job on the show. He has Believe in Duke. Also, feel free to check out BLEAV in Chiefs right there. So
awesome. Love that, Jeff. All right, man. Thanks for the time today. We'll do it again soon, okay?
Always a blast, JJ.
All right, that's Jeff Fedotin joining us here on today's episode of Locked on Blue Devils. Really great stuff from him per usual. Super excited to talk more about this win that Duke had against the Louisville Cardinals, and now they get set for that game against SMU. Be sure to follow us wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the feed, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.